The Netflix documentary Queen of Chess explores the life of Judit Polgar, the strongest female chess player of all time, and the woman who came closer than anyone else to becoming the world chess champion. My name's Nathan Rose. I'm the author of Chess Opening Names, in which I explore chess history. In this video, I'm going to give you a deeper insight into Judit Polgar's life and something of a preview into the Queen of Chess documentary. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I do all kinds of great content on chess, and by subscribing, you won't miss out on any of the great stuff that I've got coming up. Historically, chess has been a male-dominated activity, and that male dominance continues to this very day. If you go to any chess club in the world or attend any chess tournament, you'll see that the gender ratio is heavily skewed towards men. The statistics that I've seen and my own personal experience would suggest that it's about 1 in 10 of those taking part may be female. And this is even more pronounced at the elite level. There's never been a world chess champion who's been a woman. Now, chess is a sport of the mind. There's no physical reason that women can't compete on the same level as men can. Physical strength doesn't come into it, unlike, say, running or boxing or football. And the fact that they're so unrepresented in this intellectual game has led some to draw the conclusion that this says something about female intelligence more generally. Here, for example, is Bobby Fischer, the world champion between 1972 and 1975, and his views on women in chess. They're all weak, all women. They're stupid compared to men. They shouldn't play chess, you know. They're like beginners. They lose every single game against a man. There isn't a woman player in the world I can't give knight odds to and still beat. So what Fischer was saying there is that he believed he could start a game of chess without a knight. He could just remove it from the board and still win against any female player. Now, more than 50 years on from Fischer's comments, we've all hopefully moved on from the misogynistic point of view that women are somehow less intelligent than men. But still, the narrower question of why women don't seem to excel in chess and are so underrepresented in chess still endures. Now, there's essentially two schools of thought here. The first is that there's something inherently different about the male and female brain. This is the point of view advocated, for example, by the British grandmaster Nigel Short. The second point of view is that it's all down to discrimination, lack of opportunities, as put forward in the book Chess Queens by Jennifer Shahade. I'm not going to be able to settle the debate here, but I think it's very important to the debate to look at the case of Judit Polgar, a female chess player from Hungary, born in 1976, who defied all the gender stereotypes and ascended to the elite ranks of the game. Judit Polgar had an unusual childhood, to say the least. Her father, Laszlo Polgár, was an educational psychologist. And maybe you've heard of the nature versus nurture debate. Is talent something that we're born with, or is it something that we acquire through hard work? Well, Laszlo Polgár believed very firmly that it was nurture. And there's this quote here from him which sums up his approach: "A genius is not born, but is educated and trained. When a child is born healthy, it is a potential genius." So what Laszlo Polgár did is he sought to test this theory and try to prove it using his own children. Judit Polgar was actually the youngest of 3 girls, and all 3 of the girls were taught chess from a young age. Judit started her chess training when she was just 5 years old. Now, that in itself isn't unusual. Many children learn chess from their parents when they're quite young. But what was unusual was the intensity of the training regime. In a 2014 documentary called The Polgar Variant, it was shared that the 3 girls would arise at 6 a.m. in the morning, for physical exercise before breakfast. After breakfast, their trainer would arrive and lead them through 3 hours of chess training before lunch. After lunch, they'd have 3 more hours of training in the afternoon. And then that chess trainer would go home and he'd be replaced by a second chess trainer so that the lessons could continue into the evening. They also had an enormous filing cabinet within their small Budapest apartment, which was filled with thousands and thousands of note cards with chess positions on them. Some of them would be games, some of them would be puzzles, and all of these positions added to the patterns that the Polgar sisters were placing into their minds, perhaps like an early version of Chessable. This relentless focus on chess from a very early age saw Judit Polgar and her sisters engage in deliberate practice, which is a term coined by K. Anders Ericsson in a 1993 research paper. The fact that all 3 of the girls became extremely strong chess players was not down to luck, it was down to their hours and hours of focus on chess improvement. Focus which Judit Polgar herself described as obsessive. Now you may be wondering about the ethics of all of this. Were the girls deprived of a more normal childhood? It's difficult to pass judgment from afar, but one thing I will say is that whenever you hear Judit Polgar herself speak about her own childhood, as she did when interviewed on the ABC ahead of the Queen of Chess documentary's release, she seems to have fond memories of it. She describes it as being fun. She liked chess training, and she liked winning. It wasn't that she was being pushed so hard by overbearing parents. The girls themselves had to be willing participants in the study. As time went on, it became clearer and clearer that of the 3 sisters, it was the youngest, Judit, who was the strongest out of all of them. In 1987, Judit faced off against a grandmaster named Lev Gutman. So Judit was just 11 years old at the time, and you can probably sympathize with Gutman here. Here he is, he's a grandmaster, and he has to play this child. And as another grandmaster shared later, they don't like to lose to little girls, because when they do, they end up making the front page of all the newspapers. And I suppose could be added to that, they end up being featured on YouTube videos like this one. I'm going to show the end of this game. So Polgar's got the white pieces here, and material-wise, there's an imbalance. It's a rook versus 2 minor pieces. But with white to move, white's got the attack here. So Polgar plays rook f1, targeting the f6 pawn, and black also has the knight hanging. So really, as bad as it seems to allow the capture on f6, black does have to move the knight away. So that's what Gutman did, allowing queen takes f6 check. The king steps away with an attack on the white queen. And the move that Judit played here shows a tactical vision which became her hallmark. Rather than moving the queen out of the way, she plays bishop takes e6. The point being that it creates a threat on the black queen, so if the capture takes place this way, then at the end of it all, white's going to end up the exchange and have this passed pawn, which is going to eventually win the game. And if instead you move the queen out of danger, for example, queen c2, then white can actually force checkmate via queen takes d8 check, king takes e6, and rook f6 is mate. Shortly after this, the Guardian newspaper called Judit Polgar the strongest 11-year-old of either sex in the entire history of chess. One of the things that's really notable about Judit Polgar's entire career is that she was never that interested in playing in female-only chess tournaments. She did play a couple of times for the Hungarian women's national team in chess Olympiads when she was very young, but by and large, she wanted the strongest competition possible, and this was encouraged by her father as well. She played in the boys under 12 World Chess Championship and won it, She participated again in the boys under 14 World Chess Championship and won it. By the time Polgar was just 12 years old, she was already higher rated than the reigning women's World Chess Champion, Maja Ciberdinidze. 12 years old, let that sink in. She's still just a child, really, but already she's the objectively strongest female player in the world. She could have gone for the women's world title, probably would have won it very easily, but she never showed any interest in that. Judit Polgar didn't want to be the women's world chess champion. She wanted to be the world chess champion. And she set about doing it because, aged just 15 years, 5 months, she got her final grandmaster norm by winning the Hungarian National Championship and thus beat Bobby Fischer's record of becoming the youngest grandmaster in chess history, of any gender. She even wrote a book about this, by the way, How I Beat Fischer's Record, perhaps in a nod to Fischer's early comments about women and their place in chess. So let's take a step back. Judit Polgar is now a grandmaster in her own right, and through her continued strong results, she started to become one of the world's leading players and therefore getting invited to some of the world's strongest chess tournaments. Because of this, she was facing the strongest men in the world more regularly. Now, all this is happening in the 1990s, and the dominant force in world chess back then was, of course, Garry Kasparov, the man who many consider to be the strongest chess player of all time. It's one thing to be a child prodigy, as Judit Polgar clearly was, but it's quite another thing to defeat a legend like Kasparov over a long match. But that's what would be required if she was actually going to become the world champion. But Kasparov, for his own part, didn't have a lot of respect for women in general in chess, or for Judit Polgar specifically. At one point, Kasparov said, "Women, by their nature, are not exceptional chess players. They are not great fighters." And then, as Polgar started to gain more and more profile, and he started fielding questions about whether he expected that Judit Polgar could challenge him for the world title someday, he said, "She has fantastic chess talent, but she is, after all, a woman. It all comes down to the imperfections of the female psyche. No woman can sustain a prolonged battle." Now, this is chess. This is not political theory. This is not philosophy. The thing about making a statement like this is that we can put it to the test over the board, and the results will speak for themselves. And we have to say that in the early going, Kasparov seemed to be justified in his view. In fact, over the first 14 times that Kasparov and Polgar played, Kasparov notched up 10 wins and drew the other 4. So 14 games, Polgar hadn't won a single one of them. There was some controversy in one of those games, which I'm sure the Netflix documentary will explore, but it's fair to say that across the span of their respective careers, Kasparov had the much better record. At last, in 2002, the breakthrough came. The game began with a variation that saw the queens traded very early, and so Kasparov was forced to play a game which was slow, technical, not really playing to his strengths. Polgar outplayed Kasparov slowly, and we picked the game up in the following position. Polgar's playing white, and she's got the 2 rooks on the 7th rank here, causing not just threats to the black pawns, but also some ideas of actually checkmating the black king. Kasparov's move here was rook takes f5 to restore the material balance, after which Polgar played an important move, rook to b7 check, thus placing the black king on a worse square where it will be in more danger later. King to c8 was played. If instead king to a8, which is the only other move, then that pawn falls with check. So king to c8, and then there was another check played, forcing the king to an even worse square. Polgar picks up another pawn, and Kasparov cannot take this pawn here because of the threat of checkmate. This is a classic ladder checkmate, the sort that beginners learn when they're first new to chess. But if black plays king c8, removing the threat of checkmate, then Polgar can take on a7 as well, renewing the threat of checkmate, and is going to be 2 pawns up in an endgame. At this level, that's easily winning, so after king c8, Kasparov instead resigned. The video footage of the end of this game is quite funny to watch, by the way. Upon resigning, Kasparov quickly shakes hands, signs the score sheet, and I would say retreats off the stage without another word. He scampers off, probably to eat a large dose of humble pie. With this victory, Polgar had scored her first win in her career against the great Garry Kasparov, and in the process she'd also become the first ever woman to defeat the world's reigning #1 ranked chess player. But it must be said, this was still a one-off game, and it was still some way short of becoming the world chess champion herself. Could she push on from this achievement to claim chess's highest honour? Well, in 2005, Polgar had her best ever year in chess. She reached her peak rating of 2735, and she also reached her peak ranking of #8 in the world. This qualified her to play in a tournament to decide the next World Chess Champion. Back then, that was how the World Chess Championship was decided. There were 8 players playing in a double round-robin tournament, and whichever player had the most points at the end would be crowned the next World Champion. Unfortunately, Polgar underperformed in this tournament. It has been suggested that this may have been due to the recent birth of her first child, something that many women have had to deal with when balancing career with family. And Polgar was of the age where this was happening for her. Unfortunately, from there, she never really got another chance to get as close as she did to becoming the World Chess Champion. And she retired in 2014 after being the world's #1 ranked female chess player for an astonishing 25 years, from age 12 until age 38. As shared in the book The Chess Revolution by Peter Doggers, in 2015, 1 year after retiring, Judit Polgar had an interview with Time magazine where she provided her thoughts on women in chess. She said, "We are capable of the same fight as any other man, and I think during the decades that I actively played chess, I proved it as well. It's not a matter of gender, it's a matter of being smart." So Polgar's been the inspiration for many female chess players in the years since, though it has to be said that none have reached her level. Remember, at her peak, Judit Polgar sat inside the world's top 10 chess players by rating. But if we look at the list of the world's top 100 chess players right now, there are no female players in that list. In fact, you have to go all the way down to number 123 in order to find the first woman. That's Hou Yifan of China. And Hou Yifan is 31 years old now, so she's not a rising prodigy. If there's going to be a female world chess champion, it's going to have to come from the younger generations. As Stephen Moss wrote in his wonderful book, The Rookie, it seems that to reach a wider public, chess needs to be a metaphor for some broader struggle. So if you think back in history to all the times when chess has penetrated the public consciousness, it was Fischer versus Spassky in 1972, where it was the Western democracy bloc versus the Eastern communism bloc. Or it was Kasparov versus Deep Blue, the struggle between man and machine. If we were to get the next Judit Polgar, a woman who could seriously challenge for, and better yet win, the World Chess Championship, then chess would have its greatest media coverage in decades. It is, after all, one of the remaining glass ceilings that women are yet to break through. If you enjoyed this video, do drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this one, and drop a comment down below. I love to hear from you, and I hope you enjoy The Queen of Chess. I'm looking forward to watching it, and I hope you are too. I'm Nathan Rose. Bye for now.